Hello! How's everybody doing today? Sorry for our slow start to today's stream. I thought I was just gonna head out to throw away my breakfast bowl, but instead I lingered to get water and some other stuff. If you can believe it, I still have yet to have my coffee, which is what I was just doing now. Trying to make sure we have a good spread here. Other stuff that I did today. This morning I wrote 2 new assembly functions, which means I'm probably not writing any more assembly, at least on stream. I know that's a particularly dry aspect of the experience of watching this stuff. It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do on stream. So we're going to try to do stuff that's a little bit more interesting. A little bit more epic. Oops. The wrong button there. Just publicating the streams now? Why did they change the fucking order of stuff? I swear to God, these people just changed the UI for no actual reason ever. And now we are well and truly... Wow, it's been a while since I've looked at AI. Holy moly. I see what I'm trying to see if I can improve the defense looping. It's probably not worth trying to fuck with right now, but more or less I'm thinking that at least in the early game, if you're losing production structures, you're probably going to lose the entire game. Like, multiple, right? If you lose more than one. But even one sets you back a lot. And so I'm wondering, in the context of this, like, what would be a better metric? And I was thinking maybe if your production structures are under attack, and they are like that for a long time, it might make sense in that sense, but I'm not sure. Maybe we'll control Z our changes here. Take a second look at this. I'll come back to that idea later, because it's not super important for this stuff, but it's probably something we should figure out. I love that big, long, define max thread, listing all the units of the Terran arsenal, I think. Now, the defense logic, is, as far as what they actually request, we should probably get a defense scaling or defense relative command, similar to attack add relative. Something that's like add 2 Marines for every barracks for defending. Okay. But I can't do anything about that right now, so let's take a look. Just refamiliarizing myself with this stuff. So the thing about defense relative is it'll allow me to give the AI requisite instructions based on any personality it can follow. Like, if you've got a barracks, train 2 Marines out of it when you're under attack. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case for every AI personality. Like, sub-personalities within this that use different build orders or use different strategies would, in theory, be able to say, like, all right, instead I'm going to want a ghost out of that, or whatever. A firebat out of that. Stuff like that, you know. And I think that's fine. I guess the one problem or consideration for defense relative would be it's already relative to the number of regions that are under attack. And so I don't know if we would need to have a flag or something that would be operating as like a special consideration for that, where... I'll see what other people have to say about that idea before I think too much more on it. So upgrading is also another thing here that I'm going to need to figure out. Now, it looks like this personality is more interested in vehicle and infantry upgrades. So the one thing I am thinking about is maybe the research still requires... I mean, August Grad's Revenge should probably require a science facility. Oh, maybe not. I mean, it's... What? Now that's a bug if I've ever seen one. Why did it just vanish? What the fuck? Wow. I've never seen that before. Well, I guess August Grad's Revenge sometimes just doesn't want to be researched. Anyway. The question becomes whether or not it makes sense to restrict all of the research. I think maybe everything would require an armory, and August Grad's Revenge could be included in everything. Because you already start out with cloak researched now, so I think that's fine. Yeah, that is very strange. I'm thoroughly perplexed anyway. I don't quite understand that one. Alright, so we made those changes. Plug those in the new game state document as well. Trying to figure out from memory what the tech requirements, or tech costs rather, of lockdown are. Alright, so I put those in, so that's good. I have to do a lot of rewriting now that I remember for the document there. Right. So, I definitely had some sort of issue putting together a script that would function in this context. Or not necessarily function, but I wanted to find some way to make the AI somewhat intelligent. With the requirements or the conditions under which it would make certain things. So for example, this would be like call wait defense low for anything that was not production structure. What's up, Vic? Nice. Aha. And then I have the attacks. So yeah, in theory, this AI should be completely good to go. Who am I doing? I'm doing good. Doing well. Before I started today's stream, I coded or translated 2 functions for iQuare from assembly. And then I started here, and I've just been going through this Melee AI script that I was working on for the Terrans. And it was supposed to end up being very basic for now, and then I was going to add functionality for different things, like different subroutines or different ideas for what the playstyle would be. Stuff like that. But I haven't really tested it much in the wild. I mean, as a matter of fact, I really don't have any guarantee it'll work at all. So, we might as well give it a try. Yeah. Just quickly move through that. Oh, right. It's no longer called that because I took the IDs. That'll be interesting. Fuck. What kind of dummy IDs can I use then? I guess I'll just have to do power generator or something. Something that I also have not messed around with. Remember when you were telling me, like, oh yeah, there's all these options to turn off the debugging, or not the debugging, but like the error message or confirmation prompt or whatever that would pop up. It was supposed to be in the settings somewhere. I don't know where. But there was supposed to be something that you could do to change, like, whether or not it would work or it would annoy you. And then you were like, I did it and it did nothing, and you were like, oh, the function, they don't even work. So you had to hard code the changes into Pi AI. This is like many months ago now, but that always cracks me up. When like PQ started to do something, but didn't do anything. Wait, I forget. What even did I have here for forces? Oh, never mind. Oh, I think it's already in there. What I was talking about, like, months ago, there were, you know, when you pressed save, it used to be like, are you sure you want to save this AI script file? There's already a file with this file in it, or whatever, like this ID in it. And you had to hit, like, yes to that, and, like, yes to something else. And it was every single time. And there was supposed to be some option to turn that off, and it didn't work. And so you had to go in and manually, like, fuck it. You should look at some things, some, like, configurations or whatever that are saved. I think if you go into the settings window, actually. So if you go into Pi, the main folder, and then go to settings, these are all in here as things for you to edit. Right? So, like, if I go to my Pi tile. So what probably is the... I mean, it looks like edit mini tiles and show mini tiles are here as options, but yeah, they aren't saved for whatever reason. Oh yeah, well, if you wanted to make it more flexible, that's fine too. So, like, in this case, when things are not, for whatever reason, they're not saving, like I always have it set to dots, but I always have to reset it after the fact. I reported that a while ago, I think. If not, maybe I just set it on stream or something. But that's I'm not really sure what you would do to make it so that those are forced into the save, but there's got to be something that runs during the program. Oops. shouldn't it automatically remove by itself? And yeah, I saw the fact that you could just type in your own zoom if you wanted to. Why? It's not smart enough? Oh, okay. You mean to actually do that thing that I was describing? God damn it, the overlords are spawning again. Oh, it might be because they're set to user select, actually. Should have set them to neutral. I love this by the AI. But you know what they say, I mean... Base layouts are just an option. Hi. Hey. Oh shit! Brutalized. Nice placement. Pretty insane, to be honest. Aw, man. There we go. Psychosis. Nice bunkers. I love these. Looking good, man. They're just not allowed to build on the low ground, okay? The floor is lava. Meanwhile, a much more sane approach from this AI. It's even got a nicely placed bunker over here for mineral defense. An okay missile turret placement. This one's a little strange, I guess if he's getting muta rushed or something. You could sort of justify it. This bunker's out of nowhere though, that doesn't go there. Big dum-dums. TBH. Hi. Execute. Do they already have +1 armor? Nice. Looking good, boys. Big kiss. Purple's somehow way far ahead as far as upgrade timings go. Oh, Ahmed has been routed around the engineering bay. See, if this isn't what you guys signed up for, I don't know what is. I'm somewhat impressed none of them have gone for an expansion. Don't know what's up with that. The double Ahmed guarding the command center is always a classic. We have our first strange realm. Double starport. We have one starport here, but no factories yet. I wonder if this AI has just run out of build space or something, because they're not doing anything. Settings are only saved when you exit the program when tileset is unsaved and you click save. Oh. Yeah, that's reasonable, you know, that's exactly what I would expect, actually. Oh, here we go, we got our first factory. Meanwhile, yeah, these two AIs have gone for double starport for some reason. Triple starport from blue, holy moly. What's this? Oh. They're gonna dawn it up, dude. Meanwhile. Hi. Oh. I don't know what's happening over here. Beautiful. I love that he's got triple starport, and I don't see a single area in it. Uh-oh. Some infantry squads squatting up. If this machine shop goes down, it'll be the laughing stock of the entire fucking map. Hi. Don't mind us. Just sneaking by. 007 over here. Another squad of infantry. I should just... get rid of my base. TBH. Lovely ball of infantry. We got a lifter. What the fuck? I think that's a stacked structure right there. I'm pretty sure. Oh, barracks, barracks. Bunker. I like the bunker. That's a good idea. We're getting some research. We still have no fucking areas. Why did you go triple starport? Why? What's wrong with you? At least this guy built a dropship with his. I'm saying barracks. That must mean that they are all floating minerals. Nice bunker placement. Get him. Uh-oh. Aw, man. Ahmed. Oh. Oh! Ahmed's? Dude, Ahmed's reigning supreme! There's so many high-quality Ahmeds in that area. You probably should have stayed in the bunker. If you want my professional recommendation. Uh-oh. Executed. Hi. Holy moly. Oh. It's okay. A giant piss line of Ahmeds is on the way. See ya, nerd. Oh shit, the first mech unit I've seen all game. And he's got plus... I wasn't expecting this. +1 vehicle plating. Check him out. This is bullying. He just now got his +1 vehicle weapon. So we still have no air units. We've got fully upgraded wraiths by the looks of it, but not a single air unit. Not a single wraith. Why? Why would that be the case? Yep. I love that. This AI has nowhere to go. It's got nowhere to build. Disastrous. Oh, nice bunker placement. Too bad you didn't staff any of them. Hi. Executed. Oh shit! +1 Goliath too, and +2 armor. Uh-oh. Oh dear. He's under attack, boys. It might be the end of him. Vulture body block, dude. What would have helped him here definitely ghosts. He doesn't have logic to get ghosts that early in the game, though. So. Well, that was certainly something. I'll look into why they're building starports but no air units. And then I'll also add in some stuff for ghosts. But I think some of this stuff is kind of mutually exclusive. So I should probably fragment out my build orders and some other stuff that's like those, like a build order or personality in terms of building stuff. I should probably fragment that out now and then write one. I think like right now the build is kind of partly random and partly like all round everyman, you know? And so I think I should class it out into like pure bio and then pure mech and then like air mix and then start with like just those very rigid requirements and then work my way into making them a bit more nuanced than that, a bit more blended than that, after I've done some tests and after I've figured out what the structure of the AI looks like. So that'll be my next move, but first I have to use the bathroom, so BRB. Oh shit, you deleted your evidence! How could you, actually? And we really need, like, an algorithmic, an update to the build algorithm in general. It's so limited. I think even if we just patch out the decision-making to keep everything on the same height level, it might be fine. Oh. So what's causing the issue? Do you know? Yeah, that's really strange. I was thinking, too, that the more I thought about that, the less sense it made that there would be any question about the, like the, what's it called? Like, why would it not track all of them equally? You know what I mean? That's my confusion. I just don't understand why there would be distinctions, more or less. Ah, I see. So the factory bit only goes for... Okay. So let's rework this part of the system then. Instead of this being a perpetual loop, we should make it so that this is a function that gets called and then stops. So we don't need any weights. We don't need a go-to, add starport, or add factory, or add barracks. Well, this function would then just do nothing if it didn't have any money. So I guess that's fine. And then here in the add production thing or whatever, I mean, this is a fine way to do it if we find a way to loop this particular thing, right? And so add production would be like... I don't think there's a multi-run based on conditions. So we would have to like... Instead of stop, I guess we could return? Maybe not. Maybe we don't turn it into a call. The other thing that we can do, though, of course, is we can call weight defense medium in the middle of here instead of calling it several times, so we can get rid of this. And then we can do something to the effect of, like... trying to think how exactly this will be assembled. Hey Veek, since you've been here for a while, you mind telling me how the audio is? Still getting used to the new mixer. This is the third stream with it. Yesterday I was told the music was too loud. Obviously right now it's not very noisy, but have there been moments where it's been hard to hear me over the music or whatever? I upped the gain last stream, so that shouldn't be the case, but we'll see. Oh, what's up? Is it Viljo? I don't know how to say your name, but hi. Glad to hear that it seems to be fine. This setup is a fairly solid way to test the general lack of like fidelity or robustness of the AI's ability to build on stuff, because if they're on the medium ground, they refuse to build anywhere but medium ground, so they'll go all the way up here to build instead of just building down here. So and it also has a lot of areas that are generally missing quite a bit of build space compared to what you might normally see. I think the other aspect of this, too, is, like, Blizzard never really made AI in the campaigns that built a large number of structures over time. And that, to me, is really unfortunate, but also really bizarre. And I feel like they would have exposed the issue that we're talking about right now if they had tried to do something. But they didn't. So. It goes back to the idea that a while ago, Necron interviewed Bob Fitch, who talked about, he was like the lead programmer for the AI, and he talked about how more or less he had some idea to implement an AI module into the Star Edit for the game's launch, way back in the day, obviously. And the incentive there was like, hey, if we do this, then, you know, people will be able to make their own AI. And that alone would have changed so much about history. Like, it would have opened the floodgates for actual AI development. Well, yeah, I guess that's another component of it all, too, is the fact that there's few people who actually were interested in the production of AI. I mean, obviously, it's not really an excuse. Like, if you're interested in making content in Brood War, you need to make custom AI for that content, assuming it's RTS content. If it's not RTS content, then you're dealing with somebody who's gonna have to dig deep into assembly, learn a lot of programming, so that they can hack this engine into something that can be used for whatever they're trying to make, like a MOBA or something. But if what they're after is an RTS, you need custom AI. It's non-negotiable. So otherwise you're just signing yourself up for churning out another mediocre project that's dime a dozen in the scene. That being said, any way to reduce the barrier of entry would have, like in this case, the existence of an officialized Blizzard authored tool for making AI would have, I think, facilitated more surface level interest in AI development, which in turn probably would have meant that SEM Draft, assuming it still came around in this alternate timeline, would have had some improvements to that AI module, and that people would have dug deep into the AI and found more parts of it that were not working correctly and really tried to debug it. Like, if you have more surface level interest, for one, you have an increased likelihood of some of those people, of a larger number of people penetrating that surface, going as deep as they want to, like deeper than most people will, right? Like people like me and Iquare and Nave and so on. Like, you'll have more people who are like that, just by virtue of them being like some percentage of a larger number that is just sort of interested on a surface level. Like, if you have more people who are interested in that level, obviously you've got more people who are going to be even more interested and become enthusiasts, or I hesitate to use the term professionals, but experts or whatever. And then from there, you can also imagine that just in general, more surface level interest would have meant that there was like a passive level up of in terms of the scene. Like, more people would have been using custom AI in their campaigns if it was just something you could modify in Star Edit. So is it now possible to build refinery on that unbuildable terrain, guys, or no? That's just a nice bit of visual storytelling, that this area was mined before, and this player who's responsible for that mining was like lifted off or whatever and moved over here. So it's like this was a mining operation before, and now it's not, more or less. How am I? I am great. How are you? Yeah, I don't think that people who, for one thing, like, the more tools that you have at your disposal to create a fully fledged project that does actually justify its existence based on its own merits, the more likely a project like that it comes into existence by virtue of somebody making it. as flawed as in Consummate is, it provides a better gameplay loop than the default Blizzard campaigns. And so using that as an example, or using maybe the Reaver Menace from iQuare as an example, for an example of content that's not specifically mine, so that people don't think I'm just hawking my own shit. When you consider it that way, it's like, okay, now I'm looking at a project that is better than Blizzard's own, that provides a better experience than Blizzard's own, and that demonstrates that it is possible to make an experience that is better than Blizzard's own. And thus I should stop idolizing Blizzard's own content and standards, or trying to meet them. Like that can be my new bare minimum, or that can be like, yes, one metric, one milestone, but not the end all be all, and certainly not the pillar of quality that other people do perceive it to be at this point. So the more you stray away from the sense that Blizzard is somehow responsible for a great piece of art, or a great piece of work, or a great experience in an interactive sense, the more you will look to internally for some way to develop a better experience, and the more you'll look externally for other people to have developed a better experience. And I think those are the key ingredients to actually self-motivating, to the point where you can feel like it makes sense to improve, or it makes sense to go down a certain rabbit hole. You're in a snowstorm in Finland, but you're good. Yeah, it's been stormy in general. Yesterday it was we had a nice thunderstorm towards the evening. I got home just in time to not get destroyed by rain. So. But I hope you're staying safe and all that. All right, I can close this, I think, and that. Move this into my other monitor, or my other workspace. Don't need it right now. Okay, so we are looking to improve the way that our AI requests defense structures. So I think this should probably be done on a basis of like, what is this AI's personality? i.e., what kind of composition is it going to be desiring? And it should prioritize composition and then sort through how much money it has. Like, the decision-making tree should basically be, this is my personality, this is what I like to use, this is what I believe will give me the best chance of victory. Those two things are actually kind of different. So it would be like, what are the things that my AI personality prefers? Then of those things, what will give me the highest chance of victory? And then of those things, what can I afford right now, or what makes sense to purchase right now based on other factors, like how much time do I have before, like if I've been attacked constantly, then I want something that's going to immediately come into effect and have a more immediate power spike, as opposed to something that, like a battle cruiser, that will take a long time to build. And so there's like different tiers of decision making that I would want my AI to go through. I don't think we can do a great job of facilitating that right now, because while we do have something like enemy race jump or something like that, which is a vanilla command, we don't have something that takes the sum of all enemy races and then says, like, jump if the most enemies are Protoss, or jump if the closest enemy is Protoss, or something like that. Like, there's nothing that is built into the AI logic that we can use to say, I've scouted an enemy and he's Protoss, and he's very close to me. And so therefore I'm going to not build I'm not going to heavily invest in bio units, because odds are he's going to have Zealot Dragoon, or he's going to have a Reaver, or he's going to have something that will make it difficult for me to win or be effective against him if I am going bio. So I'm going to go mech instead. I'm going to go air. I'm going to go bio air, like, fast Wraith, fast port into, double Wraith, so that I can handle any shuttles that have Reavers in them, so that I can pick off Reavers, so that I can, force observers. If he doesn't even have a robotics facility, all the better. Like, I can get some control from that, and that can be like a higher percentage play or something. And that's obviously assuming that the personality would allow for such things. Like, assuming the AI personality would want to go fast Wraith or something like that. But again, we don't have the ability to do that yet. So we would need some sort of like overarching measurement of what the total number of enemies were and what the total number of enemy like races were. So if there's 3 Zerg and 2 Protoss on one team, or just in general that you're enemies with, like you should be able to say, all right, since it's Protoss and Zerg and there's more Protoss than Zerg, I want to go some bio to deal with the Zerg, but I also have to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, the Protoss army will negate bio effectiveness, generally speaking. So I'm going to need to consider that, and then I'm definitely going to prioritize science vessels so I can irradiate defilers, and so that I can use radiation shockwave upgrade to EMP Archons and High Templar and stuff like that, so that I can EMP Protoss in general, so that I can use Observance to deal with Zealots and stuff like that. Like there's all sorts of different things that you can do with science vessels that will help you out with in that sense. Whereas if it was like Terran, you might want to go Azazel for D-Matrix and Cloud Cover instead. So there's a couple of different considerations there. And then that's before you even start to consider, like, what about my allies? What race is my ally? What is my ally doing? Like, how can I communicate with my ally to figure out what exactly we're doing there? That's there's a lot of complexity that emerges from just having the AI consider the world it's in, the state of that battlefield, and the state of itself. Like, has it been pressured? Has it been free to do whatever it wants? Stuff like that. So bringing it back to where we are right now, and not the imaginary land where we can keep track of all of those things and turn them into actionable conditions that we can use to make intelligent decisions. Let's just talk about what we have right now. So we're calling this weight defense medium thing, which in essence just decides, hey, I'm going to wait for wait until I'm not under incredible amounts of pressure, more or less. Or not incredible, but significant amounts of pressure. Once I'm out of, that in general, I can move forward. And potentially build this stuff if I have the money for it. So we should probably be checking the money first, because there's not really any point in calling this wait function if we don't have the money to actually do anything once the wait function returns true anyway, right? So if we were to do that, we could say, let's wait until I at least have I guess it's 300, so we'll say resources 13 at least. Now then, from here, we can decide what is the most important production structure that this AI would prioritize. Again, we're just going off of the assumption that this is the everyman AI, so I'm not going to make any significant changes to like specific personalizations or changing specific things. So I'm just going to say resources 13 at least, 300, or add barracks. And above that, above that we'll say resources 13 at least, 400 any, add factory, and we'll say resources 13 at least, 300 any, add starport. So these are the basic conditions for them to jump to these particular blocks. Now once we reach add barracks, obviously it checks to see if it has the tech requirements for a barracks, and then it'll say, like, again, this case where we omit the need for this. So what we really should do is call wait barracks, call add barracks check, which is down here, and then instead of stop we'll do go to add prod. Right? And this is all good. I don't really care anything about all that. I already took a look at that. And here we'll say call wait fact and call add factory check. And down here we'll say call star. Is it? Oh, it's probably also wayfact. And then call add starport check. So the other, now we have like a basic idea of where we're going to go from here. Again, we have to get rid of this stop, turn it into add prod. The other thing that I'm thinking of at this point is, you know, do we need something else based on this? Because if the AI has a lot of money, they're only going to add factories at this point. And so there should probably be some sort of upper limit. Where, for example, like maybe we should rework this stuff into I'm not really sure how you would do that though. So maybe we should rework the add factory, starport, and barracks things into a set of calls instead. And then what we would do from here is instead of going to add prod, we would simply return. And we would have to set some sort of depth as a variable, and then check that variable between the resource checks that also would become the calls. And if that variable was set to 1, because it's a Boolean, we would jump to the top of add prod and I guess at this point we would say like in set and then say side just term 1 blank. Right? Or we'll set it to 0 rather. And then deaths 13 at least. 1. Add prod. And then obviously we don't have to do it for the barracks because that's fine. And we'll say call. Here we'll say call again. And then I think here we need another Boolean variable for this, right? Because add barracks check, the system I'm going to be using here is I'm going to set side disruptor to 1 if add build has fired, right? So this would be like deaths 13, set 1 side disruptor, or yeah, right. And then we would also add it here. And do we need another Boolean variable, actually? No, I don't think so, because it'll set it to 1 other if it is, and then otherwise we can... well, I'll plug in the rest of it later. Hold on. Let me just first add this switch here. Sets it to 1. What else do we got? Then go to add return. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these checks that check for resource area quantities, and within here, right below them. So this is like if the equivalent to add barracks minimum, because you've got add barracks medium and add barracks maximum. So this is like the lowest tier. Is like you don't have that much money, so you're going to be limited to this. And so we'll say, you know, local jump. What is local jump look like? 255, at least 2 barracks add return. And we do the same thing here, except instead of 2, it's 8. And here it's 5. And this will obviously interrupt. Well, it will move before this code gets fired, which means side effector will still be 0. And same thing here, it'll be a local jump 255, at least 1 factory at return. And here it's at least 5. Here it's at least 3. Starport and 5, 3. I feel like that's much more robust now, because what this means is if it's already reached the local maximum for the production structure that it was going to add, it will then say, okay, well, my highest priority production structure is already staffed. Like, in this case, it's calling factories first, right? So we'll say, all right, I'm going to add factories because I have this much money. I'm at the limit for factories in this town. All right, let's see if I can add some more starports. If I'm also at the limit for that, I'll jump to barracks. And if I'm obviously, you know, like at that point, it's fairly reasonable. Now, this is a basic thing that just basically like is a safety check for the limitation of the local limit on how many structures we actually have. We also need, or we would benefit from having some sort of switch system that would handle this based on personality. I think we don't need to make any modifications to the barracks, factory, or starport threads, be they like the add threads, the add check threads. I don't think we need to do any of that. I mean, maybe we would want to do one different thing, which would be modifying the quantity of these structures. We might want to do that based on what the personality actually is. But otherwise, everything can stay exactly the same, and we can just duplicate this add prod thread, change the order, so maybe barracks is the highest priority instead of factory, for a different personality. And we can jump to, or multi-run that block from all of the... Well, we wouldn't even need to necessarily multi-run that block, because this would be like add prod gen. And, yeah, we can call these gen 2. And so in this case, we would say deaths 13, exactly 0. Crashed battle. Add prod gen. And we'll say 1 is, say there's 3 different other personalities that are specific. We can say mech, bio, and air. Right? And I guess in that case we can just get rid of the Gen 1 because it'll fall into it if there's nothing else. So now we can do add prod mech. And in this case we would take starport and put it underneath barracks. And this one will be bio, where we'll put barracks above factory and starport above factory beneath starport. And then we'll do add prod air, where we'll say starport above barracks above factory. And there we go. We've got our system here that will prioritize different production structures, as in call them first, and then otherwise it will say, okay, how much money do I have for everything else? And so I still want to potentially modify the number of structures that would be requested by the various blocks. And so this is where we would get into a little bit more complicated territory, where it's not really super complicated per se, but it is unclean code based on what we actually have the ability to do, because we can't add build relative to deaths. So what we would have to do in this particular point is probably... How do we want to do this? I was thinking we could transform the add build things like this, the barracks and midbay, into a call. We could call, add barracks min check or something like that. And so add barracks min check. And it would look like, say deaths 13 at least, or exactly 1. Crash battle. Add barracks min check. Oh, we'll say add barracks min. What was the first one? Was it mech? I think so, right? It's mech bio, right? Mech. Add barracks min bio. And also, if any of these ever end up being identical, like if, say, mech and air have the same, like, oh, just add 1 barracks. I don't think they will in this case. But in theory, it's like, oh, mech is 1 barracks, air will probably be 1 barracks and 1 midbay, bio will be 2 barracks, maybe 2 midbay. Or it might be like 2 barracks, 1 midbay, 1 covert ops, or something like that. That'll probably be what add barracks min bio is, and then otherwise we do add barracks. Oh, I guess we could just do let's see. Just do that. And then say okay, I like that system better. Oh, save min mech. We'll just say 1 1. And again, local jump. It's 1 barracks. Min. Oops. Bio is barracks 2, and then for non-script AI commands, as in... So you said operator, so that would be like deaths not equal to... Yeah, I could see that being useful. we can just do this. Cool. Good to. It's really nice to see that you're, or hear that you're making progress. I know you've been working on that shit for quite a while now. All right, so you know how we just ballooned add barracks min from an addendum to the add barracks check to this? We've got to do that for max and medium as well. So okay. Well, I'll continue working on that in a second. Unfortunately, I have to use the bathroom again. The flaw of drinking 1 billion cups of water a day. BRB. All right, I'm back. Let's see, I've got a new tool. Thank you. Oh, nice. You added the expanding of a tile set. That's really good. That is hilarious to me. Just opening the file over and over again, or the program, well, opening several files over and over again. Oh, nice. This is good that you allowed this to work. I mean, honestly, you should be able to mess around with copy group settings as well. Like, obviously, all this stuff up here is actually information. Like, from flags to megatile, flags buildable, buildable 2, has up, has down, edges, misc, unknowns, megatile, should all be grayed out. But copy group settings, copy megatile flags, and obviously tile subview settings has already done that way. That should be fine. I don't see why there's any problem with that. Those should be something that you can modify, because those are basically just settings. Right? The more you can work the functionality that was previously in other modules of the program into the main window as well, I think the better. So like copying and pasting flags and stuff, that's something that previously we had to do a really convoluted process, or currently I guess, because that feature isn't in there yet. But we have to do a really convoluted process just to make it so that the something like that works in a different view entirely, importing a text file and stuff. Whereas if you can somehow make it so that we can just do that through the main window, that removes most of the reason to even have the megatile palette to begin with. And the group palette, I think, like, once you add multi-select for groups in the main window, maybe there can also be a button that's like adding that works the same way that adding graphics to the in the group palette works, which would remove the necessary, like, remove the necessity for the group palette in the first place. Stuff like that, I think, is a good shout as far as recommendations go. So those are my 2 cents. I don't think so. Although somebody was looking for games in the Hydra channel yesterday. But I don't think there's anything to play against AI at this point. I think he was playing Stormborn. So if that interests you to co-op that, maybe he would be interested. you, him, and Ultralisks could smack it out. It is not very functional right now, unfortunately. But at least with human players instead of AI players, maybe there's a higher chance of the AI competing against you because the AI are pretty fucking powerful. I know it's been a while for playtesting. I mean, in theory, we're supposed to potentially have a fraud night today. I haven't seen what people are interested in, and I might be going on a hike anyway, so we'll figure that one out. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I think. But keep your eyes peeled for things, I guess, in a few hours. What was I just messing around with? Yeah, hikes are pretty fun. Now that the weather is nice, I'm looking forward to going back into that habit. I always tell myself that, oh, whatever, I'll still do it when the weather's not nice, but then I never do, so you know how it is. I can flip mini tiles? I don't know what does that mean. Is that like some hotkey? I know that there's a flip flag and a flip function. Right, yeah. Is that particularly bad? I don't get why that would be a big deal. Oh, that's good. Excuse me. Yeah. What do you mean? Oh, yeah. So there's always been a problem with PyTile where if you click on this and then try to scroll, it doesn't work. So you have to click on one of these other fields and then scroll. So if you click on the drop-down bar, it just won't scroll. That's been a bug for a long time. I just haven't mentioned anything about it because it's so ingrained in my memory that it's a bug. So if you can fix that, that would be great. Yeah, if I had to guess, that would be the case. It's like some bug with the library. Looking for 2 barracks. Maybe we can say this is min bio. Min bio. So min bio was 2 and max bio was 8, so we can say 5. Is there already been I'm pretty sure there was a 5 at some point, but I don't remember. Doesn't look like it. I see a 6 here. So we still need a 5. Is that right? Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Now that I think about it, I don't even know if it really necessarily makes any sense to bother with these factory and starport blocks. Like, I think we can just merge them in the way that we have. There, and then oh no, it has, well, I've decided it's probably not going to be a campaign as much as it is going to be similar to a really old project I had back in the day called Saga of the Zitzun, which you might have seen on the Wikidot, although it's only in reference. I haven't made a Wikidot article for it yet, but Saga of the Zitzun was basically, I called it a seasonal project, where I would release a new episode basically whenever I felt like it, and usually tethered to either a birthday of a friend of mine that was upcoming near the time when the release happened, or a holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that. And it was a nice way for me to just be like, all right, I'll make something, you know? And it was like basically a map crap before map craps, if you will, except I was putting way more than 4 hours of work into it, but the idea was kind of similar. It was like, all right, let me just like find an excuse to make something and then release it out into the wild and see what people think of it. It was back when I cared a bit more about public exposure, and also, obviously, before I had any quality standards compared to the ones that I have now. Like, I didn't do any custom AI back then. This is like 2014, 2015. I think all the way up until late 2016, or maybe it was late 2015. So eventually, the idea that I had for that project was to compile it into a season. After like maybe a year's worth of episodes had been cobbled together, I could say like, all right, let's compile this into a season and try to make it all one mod. But I did a lot of really weird modding back in the day for that stuff. Nothing crazy advanced, but enough that like it was basically repurposing a large number of the same units for, say, like basically it was like if you had there was like a different Terran faction every single map almost. That's where the Kenyans came from, actually, is that project. And the Zitzun, obviously, which you might remember from some of my other map craps. They all came from that project. And the Zerg were almost always Zitzun, but Terrans were like... There was a faction called Anivia, which was a giant acronym. There was a faction of frauds for the Protoss. Those were always Protoss. The Protoss were always frauds, I should say. But there was Anivia, there were Kenyans, obviously. There were Redditors. There were some intern faction. There was like a whole bunch of different ones. And eventually I settled on the idea that the 3 factions would end up being Kenyans, frauds, and Zitzun. But I didn't have the knowledge at the time to still work in all of the other units. And obviously I wasn't writing AI, so I couldn't do anything from there either. So anyway, the connection to this project is that it's not really going to be seasonal per se. Like, I'm not going to be making grandiose public releases. I'll just occasionally add a new map that people can play. That's assuming I feel like releasing them at all. They are very much like Mapcraft style experiments in many respects. But they're going to have a similar approach to the narrative, if you will, where Saga of the Zitzun was never like explicit as to where in the timeline you were in this universe or in this setting with these characters. It was just like, here's another wacky adventure that these characters go on, like Rek'Sun meets Ahmed in Map 2 or Episode 2, and then in Episode 1, Rek'Sun recovers like first encounter with the frauds, and like that was kind of like an okay starting point. But in theory, there would be stuff that would be like maybe even before that, where he's fighting other Zitzun maybe or something, or he's fighting Terrans or something that have nothing to do with the frauds. Like there's room for that. So it wasn't like a sequential story where you go from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 or something like that. It was just like, it wasn't explicit. It didn't tell you were back in time or not, but I didn't care about that in particular, so it didn't matter that much to me. And that was not the focus of the story or the focus of the project. Now, Deerfucker is a similar kind of idea where you've got like a bunch of different maps, and they deal with some returning characters, recurring characters, but a staple of the project is that there are no heroes. And so, there's no hero units, there's no in-game controlled hero units. The point of it is, I want to see how much character I can provide for every individual character that's in the project. Like, I want to see how much character development I can show, how much attachment to these characters I can create, how much personality I can impart without having in-game representations. It's kind of an experiment for all future projects to take note of, because Hydra's also going to use this method. There's not going to be any in-game hero units for Hydra anymore. That's what the operatives are replacing the Terran heroes, and the champions are replacing the Protoss heroes. And obviously Aberrants were always there, but now I'm just not going to have Infested Kerrigan as a character, per se. And she was going to be the only hero anyway for Zerg. So Hydra's also going to be using this. So it makes sense for me to experiment in a project that has nothing to do with Hydra, but is using the Hydra game state. It's like, alright, this is a nice way to experiment with that idea. And a lot of the construction elements of the project, like, I don't care about when this takes place. Here's just like world building or exploring the setting, but it doesn't matter what time this happens. It's like also exploring these characters. And like that's kind of interesting to me. It's compelling stuff because it allows me to really do some interesting stuff with the way that I'm presenting this stuff. And it's also a nice way to experiment, similar to Mapcraft, just in making content within the Hydra game state and seeing how things work. Beyond that, you have the other component of this is I'm pretty sure that assuming these experiments are successful, in Consummate we'll have a very similar approach, where in Consummate won't have hero units anymore. Because I would like to have my gameplay systems be consistent. And so that's pretty much the main impetus of this project, is like a very large-scale experiment with heroes, with the absence thereof, and how that colors player understanding and expectation. And essentially what that does to the experience of character-driven RTS stories. Because all of my stories are character-driven. Because I believe that's the simplest way to make a story and still have characters that are interesting, is to have the characters be driving the experience, be the vehicle for the experience as far as the point of view, but also promote an investment in the rest of the story, because you're interested to see what these characters do in the settings that they are thrust in the environments that they are stuck in, and the situations that they come to exist within. It's like a way to anchor people's attentions and to get them invested into where the characters go. Like, that's an easier way to do it and a more efficient way to get people interested than just having like a wacky plot or a wacky premise. That feels much more hollow to me. And so if you have a character that people are really invested in, like Goska or Stralium, you're like, oh, I really wonder what's going to happen. And then maybe you're invested in the idea of like, oh, I wonder who that Dark Templar character was in that briefing or whatever. Like if I'm presenting these elements well, and I'm writing good dialogue and I'm having the voice acting be on point and all this other stuff, like if all of the execution is proper, then people are going to be interested in whatever projects include those characters, regardless of what those projects actually deal in, as long as the projects are respectful to the characters themselves and don't like shirk that off, right? As long as I'm not saying like, I fooled you, this character is actually going to completely contradict himself from now on, and he's a shell of his former self, like Jump the Shark or whatever. As long as I'm not doing that, as long as the characters themselves are intact, then the story maintains interest in people. People maintain interest in the story because they want to see how those characters respond. And it also makes my job as a writer much easier because I'm dealing with writing a story and I already have some constant element. It's not like I'm dealing with a blank canvas. As soon as one character is involved and I have past experience with that character and I know that character's motivations, I know what they're like, I know what kind of dialogue they might say, as long as I've got that written into my brain, I can immediately look at that and say, okay, here's an example of something that might happen in this story just because this character is in here. Like, it's not a blank canvas. I have something to go off of. And so if I say the setting is even something really wacky, like if Goska were stuck in the Sigmaverse with Ahmed or something insane, right? Something that I wouldn't really be interested in doing, but say for a second that was the premise of a project, I will know what Goska will respond to, how Goska will respond, like what he's going to be interested in, what his motivations are going to be in this new world, right? And how he might respond to this situation. And maybe he would just maybe that would break some part of his psyche or something. Maybe he would become a little more unhinged because it's like, really, after all I've been through, this is where I wind up in some broken satirical universe. You can imagine what might happen in that situation if you have an understanding of the character. And so as long as I communicate a proper understanding of that character, a proper vision of that character, of any character, to the audience, they can project onto any setting what that character might do and what might happen as a result of that character being in that position. And then they can say, all right, well, now I'm going to play the project and experience what that character does and see how it matches up to my situation. And also see what the result of those actions are. Like, it's not just that, I can predict what this character would do. You can't necessarily predict whether or not the character will be successful either. Like, you have to actually see what happens. And so it adds in a vehicle for the player without that player feeling like they have to project themselves onto the character and say, I wonder what I would do in that situation, because they might be very different than Goska. They're probably very different than Stralium or the Protoss characters, because those are not human characters. And so you can see where I'm going with this, I think. Well, if you're asking like what kind of stories can you do outside of character-driven stories, the idea is kind of like a plot-driven story or whatever, where the characters are simply vehicles to explore a setting or to witness events that happen, and the characters don't really have an impact. It's like a cameraman in the middle of an apocalypse or something. It's like the characters are necessarily or not necessarily like complex, but they allow you to see what's happening. And there's elements of that storytelling approach in a lot of things. Like in the first Star Wars movie, that's Luke. Like he's the farm boy. He doesn't know anything he doesn't know very much about the mythos behind the Force and the Jedi, and he experiences that. Kind of similar to Frodo, I think, or Bilbo, or whatever his name was in the first Lord of the Rings movie, where he goes through and he has this crazy adventure, and he experiences this epic world and this epic journey. But at the beginning, he's kind of an everyman in that sense. Like, he doesn't really know that much. Obviously, he's got a bit more unique characteristics to him than Luke does. Luke is much more like anybody can relate to him. Anybody can project themselves onto him. Horror movies are a lot like this, by the way. Horror movies, in general, have characters that are tropes in most cases, that are basically cutouts, like carbon copies, copy pastes, whatever. And you have a situation where the character is like very easily understood, so that you can relate to them, and they're very relatable in general if they're written well. Where it's sort of meant to be like lowest common denominator in a sense, but not in a sense where if they're done well, they're not doing so to insult your intelligence. It's just the way that things are, because if the more people who can relate to a character, the more likely that scene or that tension will be communicated. In a horror movie, you want to be able to imagine, what would I be doing in a situation like this? And if the characters are doing something that you would never consider doing in a million years, then it's not really going to work for you. It's not going to be scary for you because these characters don't seem reasonable in that context. And that's why it doesn't work for in poorly made horror movies where characters are like cartoon characters or something, instead of actually being relatable in any capacity. If you can't relate to the characters and the decisions that they're making, you can't see the value in those decisions, or you can't understand why they would do that, then it's not going to work for you specifically based on that. But that's kind of the approach that you would see. So there's shades of that in a lot of stories, especially if there's a protagonist that learns about the mythos and the world building and the premise of the setting as time goes on. Like, they learn with the audience, or the audience learns with that character. That's a shade of that kind of approach, where you have events happen around the character, and the character responds while learning about those events. Horror movies are more like, it's that approach seen through to its logical conclusion, where usually it's not about the characters, it's more about the monster or the killer or the threat, and you get to see how those characters respond to them. And whether or not it's horrifying, it depends on, how effective how relatable the characters are, and how effective the scenes are directed, and a bunch of other things. So that's like one thing that is distinct from character-driven stories, where characters are enacting change in the world as opposed to responding to a threat that is simply, not necessarily unwinnable in a fight, but if they're responding to events as opposed to generating their own events that then are in turn responded to by other characters, like if the story is about characters responding to events as opposed to the story being about characters both responding to and creating their own events as a result of their choices and how they respond to events, you can see where like one of them is deeper than the other in that sense. So hopefully that at somewhere down the line answered your question or questions. Right, yeah. I mean, having characters that are essentially like, I've thought about this in the past too, is having characters that have traits and are developed in some sense, like they have something that sets them apart, but their characters are not explored, just presented deadpan in that sense. Like, oh, we've got like, it doesn't present, like, if you're not presenting a character in a way that makes it feel like there's a reason for you to pay attention to how that character was presented, if that makes any sense. I'm struggling to articulate that one, but when you read a dialogue line, or hopefully when you hear a dialogue line voice acted, the experience of having that, like, that dialogue line is there for a reason, and it was written that way for a reason. Or in a perfect world, all of that is true. Most of the time you get filler or boilerplate shit or copy-paste shit, stuff that is just, it doesn't actually merit any analysis, especially in custom campaigns this happens, because the people who wrote that dialogue are not aware of the function of dialogue. And when you have a situation like that, it's very difficult to, I think, fairly judge or appreciate or review any of that content. Because it's like it's missing a core component of what makes that content, of what makes it effective, of like what justifies its inclusion in this context, all that stuff. So one of the reasons why in consummate caught people off guard in the story department is because everything is there for a reason. Now, it may not necessarily be a reason that's very well justified. It may be unnecessary, or it may be dialogue that hits you over the head. Like in The Harvest, there's dialogue where Tuzor says something to the effect of, "I will not tolerate insubordination from an underling." That is me literally telling the audience what Tuzor's character traits are. It is very obvious, hit you over the head dialogue. It was not treated with any degree of subtlety. It could have been more engaging and interesting dialogue that showed more character, or even implied character, so that the audience could pick up on that should they be interested and should they be paying attention. It could have been all those things instead of that. But it wasn't, because I was a little brain dead that day when writing that dialogue line. So that's an example of where like it falls short. But it was still there to illustrate that trait of Tuzor's. That Tuzor is not going to tolerate that insubordination. Like, the direct line reading of that dialogue line is the message I wanted to convey. But when you convey it in that way, it loses some efficacy. Just because of the fact that the player... If the audience are paying attention in that sense, the player's just going to feel talked down to. It's like, okay, this is how you're going to present this aspect of that character to me. Like, it feels a little silly in that sense. So that's one area where it would be very obvious that you could improve the dialogue just by writing it in a different way, where instead of saying that, then Tuzor could simply shut down Goska's whatever Goska was saying. Like, Tuzor would just say, "Be silent and obey," or something like that. Like, very short, terse, to the point, doesn't occupy a lot of gameplay space, where the player's in the middle of trying to macro or trying to play the game, and they're getting distracted by a dialogue line. So it fulfills that category, or satisfies that condition of dialogue within an RTS. But it also tells you that Tuzor... I mean, it shows that Tuzor is not... he's all business in this context. He's not going to put up with this shit, without him literally saying, "I'm all business and I'm not going to put up with this shit." So it's a much more nuanced way to deploy that kind of information. That being said, it's very rare that you can take a look at an element of story design or narrative design, the way that we've been talking about right now. It's so fucking rare to be able to look at that in the context of a custom campaign for Starcraft and actually come away with something that you can say, "Oh, that's why that's there." Like, it's so impossible to reverse engineer most of this stuff, because it's not thought of by the author. The author doesn't think about that, or at least it doesn't seem like they think about it based on what they're saying. And if at the best case scenario is that all of your dialogue is as deadpan and frankly boring and telling over showing, like poor storytelling, as that one Tuzor example I gave you, where the dialogue ends up being something that is telling you something, instead of you observing an interaction between characters and coming away with your own interpretation of that, of whatever that was. So, like, at best you get deadpan dialogue like that is just straight up communicating whatever the theme is, or whatever the trait of that character is, and has no gravitas, has no nuance, has no subtlety. The more, as a general principle of writing dialogue, and I would say of anything, of any capacity, the more you can accomplish with less, the better. And so, like, basically, if you have a line and it takes 10 seconds to read, so it's a 10-second transmission, in those 10 seconds, the more you can do with that real estate, generally speaking, the better things are. Like, the more efficient your storytelling is, or your communication is. And so you could say, for example, there's an AI player that's arriving on the map, and you want to have a dialogue line that announces their arrival. And you want that dialogue line to be sent from the character that's arriving, that's leading the faction that's arriving. So what do you want to accomplish? You want to communicate to the player that a new force is on the map, and that they might have to be careful about them, or just be aware that they are on the map. So you want to bring that awareness to the player. You want to communicate a gameplay element to the player. And you also want to reinforce the theme of that faction, the personality of the leader of that faction. And maybe even another thing you can do in that space is you can reinforce a connection between that character who leads that faction and other characters that are present on the battlefield when that character arrives. So you can have a dialogue event that covers all of this stuff. You know, these are 3 or 4 different things that you can do just in the time span of one dialogue event. So the better that you communicate all of those elements in a short amount of time as possible, the more robust that dialogue line is, and the more efficient, the more objectively better that dialogue event is than something that communicates 3 out of those 4, or all of those 4 but less efficiently over a longer period of time. You know? And so that's one way that you can conceptualize it, is that every element of your script, every dialogue line, all of the different choices of words that you pick, like the diction of the characters, the pacing of their voice acting, like all of those elements are parts of this tapestry that you weave together with your dialogue. And the more you accomplish with just one part of that, the better your dialogue is, especially in the context of an RTS, where you want your dialogue to occupy as little space as possible, especially if it's going to be in the middle of gameplay. You want only what the player needs to know for gameplay, and within that space, you want to cram as much of the storytelling or character-related aspects as you can into that, without it obviously being information overload. So it's a balance. But again, within a short amount of time that is acceptable for an RTS, you want to be able to say, hey, I can look at that and I can say, here's what I can do in that space. Here, I can have a character that like insults another character within that space without it, and that could be a way to announce his presence as well. So I can do that, and that will reinforce the relationship in some way, or some element of the relationship. So there's so much you can do. It's hard to get into without very specific examples, but hopefully that has been informative enough. So I don't even remember where I was now. I think I was fixing that. I think we're done with barracks. Maybe move on to factory now. Oh wait, no, media air. Now, medium air, what was max air? Max air was 4 barracks. I think minimum air was 1 barracks, 1 mid bay. So medium air should probably be like 2 barracks, 1 mid bay, 1 covert ops. If there's already a 2 barracks, 1 mid bay, 1 covert ops, looks like it's min bio. Yeah, min bio looks like that's what medium air should be. Barracks, medium bio. Alright, now we are good for factories. Oh boy, this is a lot of code. We're getting towards the 1,000-line mark. But this is kind of what I expected when I was accounting for so many different personalities or whatever. I'm going to BRB again because I need water, and I just talked a lot, and it's hot, so BRB. Hi. Enjoy the rewind, dude. That's pretty awesome that you fixed the scroll bug. Thank you, thank you. Always appreciate it. Love having more functional software. Alright, so how do we do this for ad barracks? Alright. All the times I jostle my fucking computer tower. Thankfully, no failures. Whatever, I saved everything anyway. If you want to learn more about dialogue, a resource I can recommend is Red Letter Media. They're film reviewers, but obviously dialogue is a pretty big part of film. They'll give you a good understanding just watching a lot of their videos and how they respond to stuff. Respond to dialogue in movies, or they bring stuff up. Specifically the Plinkett reviews. If you can get past the... I know some people really think that the voice that is used for those reviews is really off-putting and annoying. I've watched them so much that it doesn't really affect me at all. But if you look at the Plinkett Star Wars reviews and stuff like that, you will get some sense of what kind of... like, you'll get a sense of somebody who's watched a lot of movies and reviewed a lot of movies thinks of dialogue. And that will at least give you somebody else's perspective. It's not like a guide on writing dialogue, but it will give you some understanding of like a takedown of specific examples, basically. Oh, well, I was telling you a bunch of stuff. So. Yes. That's Plinkett, dude. What's up, DF? Holy shit, I almost choked on water trying to make that face. Don't make me do that again. I guess for Starport, it probably should be... Yeah, we'll omit that. This will be the bio and the... Or maybe we can say, like... Don't need to control that. Well, since you got rid of the boxes, I don't even know if it still applies anymore. Yeah. Basically what I'm doing right now, you mean? Oh, wait. Oh, well, that's what I'm doing with this. This is going to be the blanket AI script for all Terrans. From here, I will copy and paste this and specialize it based on specific personalities and cut out whatever I don't use, which will still be work, but I'll always have the original to reference. And then from, like, once I've cut out everything I'm not going to use, we'll be at a position where I have the generic personality script for the for that faction, Confederates or whatever. And then I can take that script, and all I'll have to do is make specific base layouts and build threads, and expansion layouts and expansion threads for the AI. And all the decision making will be the same, and all of the personality, like as far as the attacks or whatever, will be the same. Maybe there'll be like some cases where one of the AI is going to have more effort in that sense on a map specific level, because maybe they rush or maybe they do a bunker contain or something weird. In which case, obviously, that strategy will not always be available in all maps, and will not, otherwise you probably just won't see it very often. Well, all right, because all it did was basically like inject different scripts to different IDs or something. I don't even remember what it did, but I know it didn't. It didn't need any integration on the game client side. It just needed integration in PyAI, from what you told me. Yeah, I mean, as we use it more, we would be able to figure out where the pain points were. Oh, wow, nice. Good job, DF. If you want to post your findings just into next Veek channel, maybe iQuare can take a look at it as well, or maybe Veek could even use your research to investigate what's wrong with it. That would be awesome. Classic. Another thing that you should probably look into fixing, Veek, is this interpreting warning with the label add factory min or add star part min being unused. If you can make this not happen, that would be great, because Pi AI breaks scripts that are like this. Because it removes the label, I think it also removes all of the other code or something like that. So, like, basically, just because it says it's unused doesn't mean it's actually unused. Like, the code can still fall into it. But in doing so, it forces me to write go to the label. So I don't know if the code would... I'm pretty sure the code would work just fine without me having to write go to that label. But it's something to consider anyway. It says interpreting error. Hold on. I'll just remove it. Interpreting warning. The label in AI script is unused. Label is discarded. So if you can fix that at some point, that would be awesome. Well, that's going to do it for me. I know this was only a 3-hour live stream, but that's how the cookie crumbles. I'll see if I'm taking a hike. If I'm not, we might be able to do some prod nights or something. I don't know. Otherwise, I'll just work on some more content. And I think that'll be it. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thank you, Veek, DF, iQuare, for all your help today and always. And I will catch you guys soon, either later today or tomorrow. Bye-bye.